Elizabeth Warren, who's running for United States Senate, describes her upbringing as a world away from where she is now, at Harvard teaching law in one of the most liberal parts of the country. Rather, she recounts her childhood in Norman, Oklahoma, as growing up on the ragged edge of the middle class, and talks about how her family struggled to stay afloat after her father's heart attack. I'm Dina Rudick with the backstory, here with Boston Globe reporter Noah Bierman, who traveled twice to Oklahoma to see how her story matched up with the recollections of those who knew her way back when. So this was a challenging story. The people who knew her, especially adults who knew her way back when, often have passed from the scene.
It definitely was. A lot of the people who she grew up with are not even living in Oklahoma anymore. And as you point out, people who were her teachers, they're not even living at all. So what I did was mostly started out online, looking for people who went to high school, Northwest Classen High School, and graduated near the time that she did, around 1965, or 1966, excuse me.
I'm Katrina Cochran. When Liz and I were in high school, we were best friends. Oh, I knew that she would absolutely be a rising star. I was almost certain she would end up in the law.
And the people of Oklahoma are very nice and very willing to help and very interested in also helping with this story, because here they have somebody from their high school who's doing something on the national stage, and they're interested in that.
And it is so much on the national stage. In fact, I think it's one of the most, if not the most, closely watched Senate race in the country. By some measures.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's hard to measure these things, objectively, but you will find a lot of outside national interests who say this is the race that they're watching.
And so I understand why you'd want to do this story. I mean, it's such an important race. Why do the story now instead of in 6 months?
It is a little earlier than usual for these kinds of stories. But in part, it's because this election has really started very early. And she is telling, as the centerpiece, the fundamental of her story, this is who I am, this is where I grew up.
Other than just the logistical challenges of finding people who actually knew her, were as close to her, what sort of resistance did you meet, if any?
I think you don't meet resistance. You meet people who say, well, I don't remember anything. You're not going to really want to talk to me. And then you have to talk to them and say, well, I'm not just interested in, whether she had third period geometry class. I'm also interested in what was it like to grow up in this part of the country in this particular time, because if you lived even in Massachusetts at this time in the
Totally
1960s, completely different.
World.
And if you didn't live through that time, as I didn't, and as many of our readers didn't, you don't know anything about the time at all. So to put you back in that place, that was another thing we really wanted to do.
There was one detail that you had about in home ec there being a makeup table where girls could learn how to present themselves.
That's very interesting. I went to the high school and met the principal, very nice guy, and he showed me around, and he was very proud in a way that he sort of thought it was funny, because they still have this room.
They learned how to be house cleaners and great wives and great home caretakers.
They use it for detention now.
But in school suspension.
Yeah, and it had, I think it even had a fireplace in it. It really looked like the ideal 1950s household put in there, so that the young ladies of the time who really, this is what they were being brought up to believe that their role would be.
Could learn how to decorate their hearth.
Yeah, exactly.
When it came out you were doing the story, it seemed like you had an opportunity to go with Elizabeth Warren because she was receiving an award. But you guys made the decision, you and your editor made the decision to go before that to see if you could report on your own and then maybe go back with her.
We wanted to see it through her eyes, but not only through her eyes. The point of the story was also to say, okay, what goes beyond this? What things should we be checking out that she may or may not be talking about? So we made the decision, let's go in advance, let's meet with some people in advance who were her contemporaries in high school, and look at these places on our own and get our own view, and then merge it with her view and treat it like a puzzle.
We ran up and down. That's where I first broke my nose the first time.
It was very interesting listening with her in the front seat of the car, looking out at these same streets, talking about how things had changed.
Yeah, they spruced it up.
I think for her it was probably interesting also, because I don't think that she talks about old times, but I don't think that she's normally asked in detail for 2 or 3 hours, what about that time that you spoke with the actor James Garner because he visited your elementary school?
We would fight on the playground about who James Garner had looked at longer. Mm-hmm. Jimmy Ann, Denise Ann, or me. And I was sure it was me.
Those are things that you might remember a little bit, but you're probably not asked follow-up questions about them. And I'm sure that was sort of awkward for her in a way, but maybe interesting in an introspective way.
I hadn't thought about that in forever.
Do you think this story would in any way influence the race?
Well, I think it'll give people an added view of the candidate, and I think it will give them a chance to match up the story that she's been telling about herself with a few more details, not necessarily details that greatly contradict it, but that just bring a new inflection to those details and give them just a better sense of who she is. So in the sense that most of us vote on candidates because we want to sort of understand them at a gut level, I think it will influence the race.